So my name is Govin Whittles, the host of the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk.
This is the platform where we hope to bring you insightful views on the latest marketing trends.
Brands are really applying it to their strategy.
Convenience and being closer to your customer.
Guests who are engaged in helping move the industry forward. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk with myself, Govin Whittles. It's a pleasure to be back, and we really enjoy these conversations because they help you as marketers, as students, learn about the industry trends, what's coming up, what the latest hot topic is, and hopefully we can bring you insights from experts in the marketing field that will assist you in your marketing journey and with your campaigns. As usual, we invite you to share our conversation on all the social media platforms, particularly LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Comment on the discussions and take part. Let's help move the conversation forward and build off the wonderful sessions we've had before. My name is Govin Whittles. I'm the host of this show. And today I am really excited to be introducing someone who not only has a keen eye for the latest trends in marketing, but is someone who is on the cutting edge of moving the needle, so to speak. Pat Mahlangu is the CEO and founder of the Lerato Agency. He is a brand entrepreneur, which is a term I'm starting to like, to be honest. And he's someone who is also the 2024 Emerging Marketer of the Year at the IMM Institute's Excellence Awards. Pat, it is really a pleasure to welcome you to the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk. And today we'll be talking about the re-evolution of the brand and some other topics, I'm sure. Pat, for now, it's over to you. Just tell us what you think about the re-evolution of the brand, what that means, and what we'll be discussing today.
Yeah, greetings to everyone who's watching this, and thank you, Gavin. Thank you to the IMM Institute for inviting me again. As if you talk about branding or if you talk about brand, you're really talking to one of my passion points and something that my life really sort of revolves around, in terms of just understanding and learning about what's happening in the world of brand and, of course, how things are evolving, with time. As you know, the world is changing at a very, very fast pace, and it's upon us as marketers, to keep up with the changes that are happening in the market. But we cannot talk about branding per se or brand or the re-evolution of brand without sort of touching on the history of brand. Some of you may know that, it started in ancient times, when people used to mark their cows to separate them, from, how can I put it, from their neighbors, or to differentiate them rather from their neighbors or other people in the community. Then what they would do is they would strike the cow with a hot iron rod to say this. For example, if it was a Mahlangu, a cow, it would say MAH, number one or whatever, just to say this cow belongs to the Mahlangus, right? But then again, with the Industrial Revolution, when it started, in the late 19th century, early 20th century, when mass production started. Again, some of you may remember the story of Henry Ford, who sort of is the father of mass production, when they started rolling out the Model T, the Ford Model T in large numbers. And that sort of, began the whole mass production revolution. I mean, revolution. And as you know, with mass production or with capitalism, rather, we always want to maximize, our resources to produce maximum profits. So it started then the need now, to for brands or companies to really do this branding thing on a sort of more commercial note, because you'd understand that back in the days, we had few what one would say products available in the market, brands in the market, and as time progressed, new entrants came into the market and they started producing again, at large quantities. I mean, if you walk into a an aisle in Checkers or Pick and Pay, just one aisle, you see the number of brands that are out there, all vying for your pockets. So then that's when now the branding then becomes very important to say, how do you then separate yourself or separate your products from the rest in the market, right? It started becoming about that. And obviously it was sort of propelled by mass media as well, because you cannot really talk about branding and marketing without media, right? It evolved, started off with print, for example, where we looked at people started advertising. I think if my memory serves me correctly, it started in somewhere in France, in Paris, where the first ad was published in a newspaper. Then again, when the radio came into the fray, marketers jumped on radio to produce ads. Then TV came, then out of home came, and now obviously, as we all know, we are on digital. So what it means is that as marketers, as brand people, what we've been always been doing is basically chasing the attention of the consumer. It's all about grabbing the attention of the consumer. So where the attention is, that's where we'll go and really, put our brands, put our products on the faces of the marketer. But what's important, what I'd like you guys to take away from this is that products are made in the factory and brands are made in the hearts and minds of the consumer. So when you play in the branding space, you're speaking to the minds and the hearts of the consumer. Someone said a brand is a feeling. No, let me start with a brand is a promise. So we moved away like from the classic traditional modes of advertising where you just plug your product and the price and people will come buying. Now you have to make a promise. And if there's one brand that comes to mind, when it comes to making a promise, is a brand like Checkers 6060, you know, which really at the core of it, it says, we will deliver whatever you order on our platform within 60 minutes. And of course, if we do not deliver on that promise, then we'll have to find ways to make up for it. That's why sometimes they say if the product is late, excuse me, if the product is late, then they would you'd get the product for free, for example. I mean, sorry, you get you won't have to pay for the delivery. The delivery is free, right? Then again, a brand is a feeling. If you look at Coca-Cola for the longest time, they've been selling us a feeling, that a feeling of happiness. When you open up a Coke, you open up, a feeling of happiness. Then we're told, a brand is perceptions, and some argue, those that are in the sort of the PR space would know that we always say perception is reality. That's why some of us buy certain car brands, for example, because we want to create a certain perception in within our community or the people that we live in. That's why, if you drive a BMW, for example, there is a sense of even if you look at their slogan or their brand promise that is share driving pleasure, but it communicates a certain, I'd say message about yourself, one that maybe accomplished, is successful. So you're creating this perception around it. So that's what brands have. I mean, brand has evolved, from just being one dimensional as well. Now it's a two-way stream. It's no longer what you say it is. If you think about it, in the during the times of mass media, which obviously still exist in some shape or form, whereby you as a brand owner or you as a marketer would just put out a piece of communication in the newspaper, on radio, on TV, and you just blast it out, and you couldn't care what people say or what think. You have done your job, and you would have publicized your advertising. But today it's a different ball game altogether. It's really about it's a two-dimensional conversation now. And now we have seen, even with recent case studies, just particularly in the digital space, whereby the conversation now, actually the power really sits with the consumer, where you can put out an ad today. um, a recent example of this is when Pick and Pay, for example, um, launched their campaign with Rick Ross. We saw immediately how the public felt about that particular ad. Yes, there's different schools of thoughts around what the campaign is, what it stands for, what could have been done differently, and an end. But the fact is that a brand cannot just put out communications and expect nothing to happen. So right now, the power sits with the consumer. The consumer is the one that's in charge of the conversation. They'll tell you right there and then that we don't like this. And it's up to you as a brand that you're going to listen to them or you're going to ignore them. But also, you've seen with brands that ignore the consumer voice, what happens to them. They do not last for long. So they become extinct. So the brand evolution is really something, re-evolution, something that we have to as marketers really pay attention to. And the reason being is that consumer tastes are changing, consumer preferences are changing at a really fast pace. We also seeing that competition is also increasing at a rapid pace. If you look at the automobile sector, particularly in the South African context, whereby we're seeing the previous sort of German luxury brands who were dominating the market now are on a decline. And now we have a we have new entrants coming into the fray in the form of Chinese brands, your Jeto, your Modas, your BYC, and really coming in and offering customers value for money, or perceived value for money. And customers are saying, why should I spend R1 million on a car when I can get a car with similar or same features for half the price? You know, and it's up to obviously the incumbent, in terms of, are they gonna adapt and change, their marketing or their product offering to cater for the market. Then also what we are seeing again is in geopolitics, and I think we cannot brands cannot be separated. Although we try by all means as marketers to say, oh, we stay away from the politics of this world. But if you look at what's happening globally, which is now obviously speaking to what I think will be, the trends in the future of marketing, where now um, brands will be an extension, or brands can be used, by their countries of origin, to drive a certain political message or posture. Brands will be an extension of the countries where they come from. It will no longer be just about, what do you call it, provenance, from a branding perspective, but also tapping into the politics. And if you look at in 2020, for example, obviously, I think America comes into mind when you talk about geopolitics, and obviously for obvious reasons. But if you look at in 2020, with the case of George Floyd, that really sort of sparked or started the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We saw brands coming to public and making all sorts of claims and all sorts of commitments and promises around how they are pushing or they will be pushing the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda, right? And it was all happy days. And now, 5 years later, we have a new president in the Oval Office that's saying, let's do away with DEI and an N. And what does that do? Now brands are saying, oh no, we're no longer going to be prioritizing DEI. We're no longer going to be hiring or promoting women, or promoting certain groups, in society. We're now going to be practicing meritocracy and you see that again, from brands now being an extension of the countries of origin. And now the consumers are going to also have to make a decision that are these the types of brands that we want to support that are not going to stand with us when we need them or push a certain agenda with us. And that's how now brands have to sort of evolve. And if you look at a brand like I'd say Nike, if you that really as a classic, I'd say example of a brand that sort of evolved, with times. You look at how it started as a running shoe brand, to being lifestyle, to being an innovation-led business, and to being one that really also takes a stand on social issues. If you look at if you look at the Kaepernick excuse me, the Kaepernick incident that took place. I think it was at a football match where he kneeled when the rest of the players, sang the national anthem while standing, and they still, stood with Kaepernick, although they knew the cost. I mean, some people were calling for a boycott of Nike, but Nike still, survived that. And what's important to note is that we know when a brand is anchored in a strong, I'd say, purpose, and they believe in that purpose, not because of PR or anything else, it will stand the test of time. It will stand the test of time. If DEI is deeply ingrained in your business, it doesn't matter what Trump says because the consumer would know that you do it because of it's something that you've always been doing, not because some president say you must do it, or some president says you must not do something. And of course, there's the obvious stuff around AI, which I think, in my view, will play, a big role in terms of how brands continue to show up, continue to evolve, in this landscape. So with AI linked to misinformation, where now consumers, again, the more this what is it generative AI becomes more prevalent, in society, then now where consumers will have difficulty in separating where the origins of a particular brand message will come from. I'm sure some of you have seen videos that look so real. You're like, this is actually, and only to find out that actually this was an AI generated piece of content promoting a particular brand. So that obviously brings I would say, challenges, for marketers, and that's why then branding then becomes so important because if if a brand is known for one thing, immediately when it goes the opposite direction, consumers are going to be saying, hang on, that's not say, hypothetically speaking, today, say Nando's now starts becoming so formal or communicating in a very formal, rigid way. We're going to start questioning, saying, no, is this the Nando's that we that we know, that we love, that we always, like their communications. So consumers will be able to separate a fake piece of communication and a real original brand a piece of communication. And obviously that's going to be very, very important. That's why the function of branding and marketing, if I was, leading a big multinational brand, or what I advise my clients today is you need to build the brand. Also, the brand needs to evolve, because when customers or consumers know what your brand stands for, it doesn't matter what comes, who is in the office, they'll continue to stand with you and support your brand.
Very, very interesting, Pat. A few things there that you've said have already jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Um, First, I gotta say, the first thing I thought when I saw the when I saw Rick Ross in that advert, my instinctively I leaned over to my family and I said, "Well, I bet you he doesn't really have a smart shopper card."
Yeah.
And that speaks to the authenticity, which is really the underlying message
Mhm.
from what you said. You said that brands exist in the hearts and minds of
Yeah.
the consumers,
Uh-huh.
right? And that's a progressive way of thinking, because I've noticed there is an intention to protect the brand coming from the brand itself, where some of the
Uh-huh.
stronger brands don't have to protect themselves. Their consumers will protect the brand because there's a certain a feeling of ownership.
Absolutely.
Um, but then the question is whether brands are reactive or whether they can shape society. Are they leaning with the curve as the curve moves up and down, or are they actually moving the curve? And what do you think is beneficial to a brand to do in that respect?
Yeah. So, I always say, there are many ways to build brand, right? And there's really no one sure way, of building a brand. And that's why the concept of pivoting and being agile also becomes very important, you know, when you talk about brand, because what consumers like today, for example, is not what they would like tomorrow. And therefore, as a brand, you have to play both, I'd say, roles, of being, ahead of the curve, really pushing
Mm.
the boundary, but also sometimes being on the other side of listening to what the consumers are saying and what they want, and being able to cater for that. The danger is when, if you don't listen to your customers or to your consumer, and you continue pushing the envelope, but it gets you nowhere. And then what that results into is, obviously, your brand will stop growing, your brand will come down crashing, and you would wonder why, because you didn't listen to the consumer. So branding, in my view, it should there comes a time when the brand has to be bold, has to do, unconventional things. And also there comes a time when the brand has to listen to what the market is saying and act um, accordingly. So it's a pendulum, and it continues to swing both ways, and the brands that really win ultimately are those that are on the pulse with the market.
Um, is that a controversial discussion in a marketing team, Pat?
Mm.
Agility, and because I know people within a group of people, you would always have people who are more conservative and those who like to take a bit more risks. And the thing with marketing is that the you have to make a decision
Uh-huh.
now, and that decision could have far-reaching consequences before you get the opportunity to apologize. And even if you apologize, it could hurt you more.
Uh-huh.
So within a marketing team, how do you approach it um, when it comes to managing the balance between conservativeness
Hmm.
uh, and and those who lean towards taking more risks and pushing that envelope.
Yeah. The thing is, what's really interesting, and some you know, of the marketers out there will tell you sometimes, what you think is the idea that will move the needle for your brand, it's not necessarily that the idea, right? We've always like even you can also bring it to an individual level where you say this idea is gonna crack the market, it's gonna make, then you launch it, then it doesn't work out. And vice versa. There's a campaign that you're like, okay, let's just do this campaign. But when it goes out there, it becomes a hit. And the thing is, you can't really predict what people would say, would think, to 100%, let's say, accuracy, right? That's where things like gut also comes into play. Listening to what your gut is telling you about a particular idea, right?
Mm.
But also, I'm a big proponent or fan of what I call the diversity of thought. You know what I mean? Perhaps before launching a campaign, before launching, going full on steam, bring other people, and not only people in the marketing space, bring someone, if you in a big organization from operations, say, hey, what do you think of this? Right? Bring even the security lady at the gate and ask them their opinion if, for example, the particular product or offering speaks to them as well. And they can give you sort of insights and feedback right there and then. And again, if an idea is too risky, sometimes it doesn't help, to go all out full on steam. You can test the idea, pilot it, launch it at a sort of smaller scale. And if you see that it's a hit and it's well received, then you can go um, all out. So it's really about, the diversity of thought, a diversity of ideas, but also just, having in my master's, we're taught the concept of Kaizen, which is a Japanese concept that speaks to continuous improvement. That sometimes you don't have to go all out, full on scale on something, but you can start small and tweak it as you move along, and especially with the big um, ideas that really also you run the risk of damaging your reputation. So those are kinds of ideas you have to really take your time with it. And of course, this is not to say I'm pushing an agenda of being too conservative, but it's again weighing your risks, in terms of, and also what the appetite is and what the cost of of getting it wrong, would be.
Have you noticed a trend in the re-evolution of brands? Let's say within the last 2 years,
Hmm.
where there are certain things that seem to be at the heart of the consideration of marketers when it comes to the evolution of brands. You've spoken about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it
Yeah.
feels like a lot of brands are thinking about DEI and what they'll do about the fact that it's on everyone's minds. The manner in which consumers look towards gender fluidity seems to
Hmm.
be a conversation which brands have been forced to take into perspective when they decide on their campaigns. But are brands evolving right now according to a trend, or things that are unavoidable? Or have you noticed the evolution of brands in a more technical way where it's less spend on outdoor, more spend on digital,
Yeah.
um, trying to incorporate AI?
Yeah, I think it's both ways. Obviously, you cannot ignore, that people are evolving, and that people now we're living in a world where one can make a choice, in terms of how they identify. And you cannot, as a brand, ignore that because those are your customers. Those are people that buy into your brand. I'm not sure if you might have seen. I recently went to the Sentin City, the mall, and there's now gender neutral toilets. You still have, for example, the conventional male female toilets, but now if you want to use a gender neutral toilet, you can use that. I mean, a place like Sandton is a brand. Sandton City is a brand, and that's responding accordingly, to what the norms of society are now. Then, from a marketing spend or from a technical perspective as well, you will find that, I mean, there's been a significant shift from a budget allocation perspective, be it from traditional to digital. And also, for example, where now you're seeing, influencers, for example, competing for budgets with traditional, I would say, media houses. That shift is there. From an AI perspective, we are also seeing, some campaigns, being sort of fully generated or produced, using AI.
In
Also,
South Africa, Pat,
say again.
in South Africa, are we seeing AI, fully generated AI campaigns?
We haven't seen one locally yet, but what we are seeing, like for example, there's a company called Forge, which is part of the Brave Group, that has implemented a system, an AI system that helps, to produce campaign at a fraction of the time. Also, we are seeing, some agencies also using AI to test campaigns or to produce test campaigns before they go on like full on sort of production. They would use AI to just sort of visualize the idea and the campaign. So AI is coming into the fray, but also at the role that it's playing now, particularly in the South African context, is just around, to test ideas, to visualize the ideas before we go on. I mean, people go on to full on production and really spending, large amounts of money on an idea that perhaps could not, fly.
Well, seeing that this is the first IMM Institute Friday Flash Talk for 2025, I think it's an opportune time to bounce some of the preferences for marketers of you being a leading marketer, Pat. Last year, towards the end of the year,
Yeah.
we had multiple conversations where we spoke about the investment in digital marketing
Hmm.
and whether we were going to see a significant decline in investment or allocation from budget perspective towards traditional and a significant increase. Um, right now, what's the feeling around that marketers are having in terms of spending most of your budget on digital?
I mean, you can't run away from digital, and what we are seeing, there is a significant, I would say, um, investment that goes towards digital. But also what we are seeing is traditional media still has a strong hold, a strong place, and it's still a strong, I would say, a platform. If you look at a brand like Pineapple Insurance, right?
Yes.
That uses out of home. Um, I think last I checked, they had out over 200 billboards, just in Joburg alone, right? And one would ask, number one, if you think about it, Pineapple Insurance is a digital brand, digital first brand, but why are they using out of home or traditional marketing? Because there's something that traditional media platforms that can do that digital cannot afford you. And in the main is that it's credibility. If you see something on TV, if you see something on a billboard, somehow you start to believe that this thing it's real, unlike if you
Mhm.
just see it on your device on social media, because there the barriers are so low that anyone can make a claim and somehow it'll get eyeballs and it'll be seen and an ad. But if you then want to solidify your brand, then you have to use traditional media platforms. So it again it's a pendulum. It keeps on moving, and sometimes I'm not sure if you ever had the saying that says, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You know,
Right. And
although
pineapple is such a great example
yeah,
for 2025 because of the heavy investment they've made in outdoor. But you know,
yeah,
the appeal of digital marketing comes from the quantifiable return on investment, where you could
absolutely,
look at the back end and then present that to your clients.
yeah,
Now, when you put up 200 billboards in Johannesburg, as a
yeah.
marketer, what are you saying in that meeting? Are you saying, listen, this is for credibility, and this is a conversation. Is it about trust, or do you have to change how you sell traditional in 2025?
There's a famous saying in our industry that half of your advertising is wasted, and the question is, or the big question is, which one? And you don't know which half gets wasted, right? And to your point, yes, the beauty about digital is the fact that you can quantify stuff. You can say, you know, 200,000 people saw my video, but then when it comes to out of home, you can't really quantify to the T. But you also know that, for example, if you go on YouTube and a video has about 1 million views, but someone would have watched it for 10 seconds, and and that's an hour video, hour long video, and YouTube will still, count that as a view. You get me? So the brand building, right, doesn't require one to have a narrow view of how things work. Even like, for example, one would say, hey Pat, you're so in tune with the geopolitics, like you're a politician or a marketer. But if you look at, for example, and that's why I watch politics and with such, great fascination, right? If you look at a case in point, uh, what's this? In the US again, the cutting of US aid, right? The budget, right? At face value, people are saying, oh no, we're wasting money, right? Why are we paying for health in Africa? And there's that school of thought. Then on the other hand, what they don't know is that that's how the US, continue to dominate in global politics. It's their way of buying into, being a major player, on global platforms. So when you take away that US aid, it means you're removing the USA off certain seats at the global table. If
They've cut their marketing budget, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. If you think about it, it really does, sort of boil down to that. You're reducing their global influence, their global dominance. And soon enough, when you're no longer seeing that US aid, you're no longer seeing any USA flag on whatever, USA will be like any other country if you think about it. And I know there's people who are like, no, no, no. But it's just that line of thinking, right?
And
So
that takes us to the next point, Pat, which is
yeah.
uh, towards the end of or in 2024, we also had a discussion around the emergence of experimental budget allocations,
Uh-huh.
where we're starting to see clients allocating money to marketing campaigns, which they're willing to write off if it doesn't work. And
Uh-huh.
and that was touted by one of our guests as perhaps where marketing will go. It's a progressive way of thinking about marketing,
Yeah.
because of course no one wants to waste money.
Yeah.
But in the re-evolution of a brand, are
Yeah.
you expecting to see more of those experimental campaigns emerging?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to the point that I made earlier on that, when you have a big idea that one, for example, would think it has high reputational risk, then it will help, to test it at a smaller scale than going on a full-on scale and having a big crisis to deal with. I think it's a wise thing that, marketers do put money aside that one would deem to be uh, one would say maybe it's a wasteful expenditure, but ultimately it's really about, having the ability or being nimble enough to try out new ideas. And of course, we do know that it does cost money, to test those ideas. So it helps to put money aside, for those kinds of projects. I think it's Pepe Mare who runs. Joe Public, obviously you all know the reputation that the agency has, and he's a big advocate of that. He says he always advises his clients to put money aside, or 10%. I think he said 10% of their budgets aside, to just for trying out new things, and we can all see with the marketing or the campaigns that come out of that agency, for example, and the brands that they work with, how they grow, just applying that kind of mindset. So it's very important that the marketers, if and even with our agency at Lerato Agency, I never really want to work with a client that would say, Pat, if I give you 10,000 rands now, can you, with 100% certainty, give me 20,000 rands back? It doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
That's not branding, that's not marketing, because
but
ultimately the consumer decides. The market is different. Things are changing at a rapid pace. But what we do know that also, if you don't advertise, if you don't spend money, if you don't build brand, you will die.
and if you don't evolve, Pat, but the thing with marketers is that it's all about that meeting and selling this idea to the client, and
Yeah.
um, retaining good relations with the clients you're doing campaigns for is so important, where it almost automatically forces people into a position where the conversation is first about the value of the brand and defending that value,
Yeah.
and then on the periphery there's a discussion about, okay, your brand should evolve. I'm coming in as a marketer. How do you want your brand to evolve? Is that what marketers should be saying, or should they say, this is how your brand should evolve? Because it's almost audacious to recommend to a client how the brand should evolve by the marketer conducting an assessment of the market itself. It's almost like brands wouldn't want, especially if it's an external agency, to come in and tell them how they should evolve based on the market.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, our role as agents, is to obviously act on behalf of our clients, or also to be an extension of our clients, and also to act in the best interest, of our clients. Because when a client wins in the market, it's a win for the agency, if you think about it. So you didn't want to recommend things that you know for sure won't work. Your client will lose, for example, market share. And when they lose market share, they have less money to spend on you. So it must be in the interest of any, agency out there to act in the best interest of their clients, because it's a mutually, I'd say, beneficial relationship, whereby when client, grows, you also grow. When client loses, you lose. So it needs to be clear from the beginning. Obviously, the ideal relationship, is when both client and agent understand that their growth is sort of interconnected and it's interlinked. That we're not gonna, like for example, sabotage the growth of our agency
Mm.
because we're always asking for discounts. And obviously, if you're always asking for discounts, it is a high chance that even the quality of the work will drop, because you're going to have an agency that one would say that's resentful, say, but we're putting in so much hours on this client, yet they're paying us less. And you never want your agency to feel like that. And vice versa. You never want your client also feeling that, they're paying you a lot of money, but you're not delivering value. So it needs to be balanced.
Um, how do you convince them though? That's the big question. Is it useful for a marketer to walk into a meeting saying, this is the state of the world? This is what brands are dealing with right now across the world, regardless of whether that's their market or not. And if you want to evolve, this is what you're going to have to look at. Is that useful?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, especially now, and again, I think it's a trending word across various, boardrooms, that, agility, and you cannot run away or shy away from the realities of this world and where the market is. We also know that, the consumer spend is shrinking. What you could buy for 100 rands last year this time, you know, today you buy less of it. And that's a reality. If you were to look at it at that basic level. So once you have that kind of an understanding, you will have appreciation for doing things differently every year and being agile and saying, does this thing um, work? Or how do we better serve our our customers, I mean, for example, I've got a friend who works in a big beverage company, and he was telling me that, last year they used to hike prices every quarter, and this year they are not because they can see that there's new entrants in the market that are vying for their market. I mean, for their yeah for their market share, and they can see the share and the market share dropping as well because increasing prices, to protect margin is no longer sustainable, and then you have to have a different approach.
An instructive example of, I'd say, ignoring the trend or maybe just going with the gut is the Tesla situation, right? We've seen
Uh-huh.
a 50% drop in the stock price that people attribute just to what they say Tesla's main man, Elon Musk. Um, and there's no change. Elon Musk had probably the most unexpected response to the drop in Tesla market share from any brand that I've ever seen, where in the wake of people not buying his cars or vandalizing his property, there was no appeal to the customers. Instead, he put a Tesla on the lawns of the White House, where the president and made the president of the country buy it and
Yeah,
threaten people who are vandalizing the that I think you can call that doubling down, right?
yeah.
But is that going to be a case study for the future, you think, of how brands evolve when they're very close to politics?
Absolutely. I think we as marketers, we should be watching that story with a very keen interest, just to see how things really pan out for them, And what we obviously know, although we're living in a world where things are no longer as, black and white, there's a lot of gray, in between, and obviously that makes it a bit more challenging for any person to really make a definitive, I'll say, assessment of the situation that sort of Tesla finds itself. We don't know what may happen tomorrow. Maybe, who knows, a month from now, there's a change of heart and things go back to where they were before, or even better, or they continue on this path and things turn out to be different, or to go, I mean, from good to worse. So it's something that I'm also following with a very keen interest to see how how proximity to 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 politics becomes a thing. But also we do know that brands are, whether we like it or not, brands are very resilient. If you think about it, I mean, uh, a brand like, if you look at a brand like Hugo Boss, which was reported to, or have been reported to have been producing the uniforms for the Nazis. If you look at VW as well, there was that association, strong association with the Nazis. But decades later, the brands are still here and they're very strong.
Yeah, I think they were able to correctly read the room. Credit to them for that.
Yeah,
And in 2025, I believe that's probably going to be one of the defining factors between successful and unsuccessful brands. Is again reading the room but staying true to your identity.
yeah.
Last year, we also had a conversation around influences
Uh-huh.
and whether we had determined or debated why it appeared the use of let's say, major influencers with millions of followers was now being put aside in favor of the use of micro influencers,
Uh-huh.
which is just community based influencers or people that are directly plugged into your market. In 2025, Pat, um, what's the role of influencers in the re evolution of a brand?
Sure. I think influencers will continue, to be a dominant player, when it comes to marketing. If you look at the marketing mix, um, influencers will continue, to play a big role, and we'll see, obviously, budgets flowing in that particular direction. And I think what informs a decision, right, in terms of what kind of an influencer you'd like to use, right? And I think for most parts, there's always sort of a temptation to sort of have a blanket approach to any medium, right? Be it even traditional, be it obviously digital, and specifically influencers. We all know, like, each form of influencer plays a particular role, or can help in terms of achieving a particular objective. If you look at, like, macro influencers, for example, the ones that have, millions of followers, they can become very helpful if the objective is what it- awareness, building awareness, right? You can use those influencers because they have the numbers, because we all know, like, for example, with social media, apparently, last I checked, I think, like, for example, a platform like Instagram, whereby if you have 1,000 followers, only 10% of your followers will see your organic sort of content. So if you take that to someone who's got 1 million followers and 100,000 people see it, it's still, sort of plays. So awareness then becomes important. Then the lower you go, to, like, micro to nano influencers, that's when really, I think, authenticity then plays a big role, whereby now the customers can authentically connect with that particular influencer. And that's when maybe the purchase decision, if the objective is really, to encourage trial or to encourage use, then those kinds of influencers become very important. I don't see influencer marketing sort of dying. I think it will continue to evolve. It's a pendulum that swings both ways. Again, if you look at, we always had influencers. It's just that they existed in a different, one would say, form. The whole issue of brand ambassadors, right? Um, Back in the days, it used to be traditional musicians, sportsmen, celebrities, that used to endorse brands, and today it can be me and you, I can share a story about how having, hypothetically speaking, studied at IMM has changed my career trajectory, and I posted online and other people are like, oh, if I go study at IMM, it means that my life also can change for the better. That's influence if 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 you think about it. And that's what ultimately brands want.
Um, and if you do study at IMM, I think your life will change, Pat.
Yeah.
Last one for 2025. Okay, let me say before we go to let me just ask you this one. So
Yeah.
do you think that in 2025 we'll see a fully generated campaign from AI in South Africa?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I
That'll be
really
the
hope
first.
so. Actually, now that you mention it, we already had one um, that won a Luri last year. Um, so I think it was TBWA with the Ricky Rick Foundation, and they produced
Right.
a song that was fully AI generated, and that campaign won a Luri. So I'm sure there is something that's being cooked right now, fully on AI. And yeah, I don't think there'll be one. There'll be plenty of campaigns that'll come out this year that will be fully AI
So
generated.
you at Lerato Agency, you guys are practicing your prompt writing for the AI tools.
Of course,
I
of
think
course.
that's great advice to marketers. Like practice how to write good prompts.
Absolutely. I encourage my team to dabble with the various AI tools that are out there. You know, it helps a lot, but then again, AI shouldn't replace, your instinct, shouldn't I don't think it will ever replace experience. The people that are going to fully leverage, AI, in my view, are people that know what they're doing,
Hmm.
people that are highly experienced, that can comprehend, the power that comes with these tools, and that can comprehend, the environment that they find themselves in. And I also see it as I'd say something that may work against, particularly the younger and inexperienced people who wouldn't, be able to comprehend the full power that comes with AI and what it can do. Not just creating a meme or funny things, but really, producing a campaign or producing work
Hmm.
that will shift the needle.
Pat, it's been an insightful conversation. Before we go, we usually take a measure from each guest in terms of the marketing team and budget. Right now, how do you rank the priorities of a marketing team? Do they look at traditional, digital, let's say experimental,
Yeah.
and then influences or anything else? What do you think the priorities are right now?
I think in the main, digital it's becoming. I mean, it is a priority for many clients. And remember, also with digital, there's still a lot of, in as much as you and I may think that digital is the thing. There are some brands that haven't even started, on digital campaigns, or who
Hmm.
understands who can even do digital marketing really well. So we'll continue to see, the adoption rate really going up, and seeing that, marketers investing a lot of time, in terms of understanding the the digital landscape and the power that it possesses. I once went to pitch to a very big company, very big a brand that has been around for a very long time, and I was told that the head of growth, who also looks after marketing, doesn't value digital. He's a big proponent of traditional, and hence they don't do a lot of digital marketing. And this was in 2024. So we can also see that on one end, in as much as we are progressing, on the other, there's still a lot of people that still have to play catch up.
Yeah, I think we'd be surprised how prevalent that mindset really is. Thank you, Pat. So as we wrap up this conversation, what would you say are the main takeaways for people who've been watching here, particularly marketers who are looking to present strategies of re-evolution, but also to stepping into 2025, hoping to achieve more and are looking for tips from this conversation?
I think in the main, what marketers need to do, number one, there needs to be, I'd say, a mindset shift, and that what that mindset shift looks like is, just embracing change. I think that's what it starts with. Embracing change, not only from tools, that are coming to the fray, but change in consumer preferences, in marketing, I mean in the market landscape, change in our society. You know, things are always changing. So if you're gonna be stuck in the old ways, you're gonna lose out in the market. What got you where you are today, it won't be what will get you to the next level. So that mindset shift is very important. Two, I'd say there needs to be you need to embrace trying out new things, and trying out new things doesn't mean that you you neglect what's working, It's just a matter of just having that trial mindset. If there's a new trend that's coming out or there's a new platform that's coming out, take some time to play with it, to understand it, and you then make a decision based on things that you've tried um, yourself, right? Not things that you read about, but you actually take time. When you say ChatGPT, for example, is a thing. Go and download it, play with it, and then end. And lastly, I'd say to all the marketers, really to take branding seriously. Your brand is an asset for the company. And we've seen with some of the greatest companies and the most valuable companies, what they have done really well was or is to protect the brand, to invest in the brand, and to continue to grow the brand. So ultimately, the brand is the number one asset for any company, and it doesn't take the marketing department to contribute to the brand only.
Mm.
Everyone in the company needs to rally behind the brand.
Thank you so much, Pat Mahlangu, founder and CEO of the Lerato Agency. This was a very insightful conversation. I've learned a lot, and I think we've set off 2025 on a great foot, on the front foot. And I'm looking forward to seeing what marketers will be doing this year and what the standout campaigns will be. No doubt they will incorporate some of the things we've discussed today. Thank you again to everyone watching. Remember to share our conversation, comment on it. We'd love to hear your views. And this year we might start incorporating some of the comments from previous episodes, just to show you that we are watching and listening at all times. For myself, Govan Whittles, thank you for tuning in to the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you next time.